For you and your constituents, are they struggling with a cost of living crisis or basking in a booming economy?
I think struggling. And I was out on Saturday canvassing on the Hoope Peninsula in my constituency, where there are, a lot of people who are finding it very difficult economically. Yesterday I was down in Ramsgate supporting my party leader, and there I think there was very little evidence of the prosperity that Kwasi talks about, let alone these wage rises.
So you would agree with Alison, you would agree with Labour's characterisation of the economy?
Well, I think what's happened with the economy, it's been very different in the past cycle, because rather than seeing the mass unemployment we've seen before, instead the economic problems have largely been reflected through wages, which have increased by barely at all and 10% less than inflation. And that's the difference. And what we're seeing in terms of I'd like to see wages rise and people have more opportunities. But if you're allowing unlimited numbers of people into the country from elsewhere in the European Union and a lot lower wage economies, then you wouldn't expect to see the wage rises. And that's a big problem.
What do you say? And yet you were very keen to blame Labour for the global economic crash, which was down to...
I think has helped from the coalition, and that's taking people out of tax. So people earn £10,500 without paying tax. And in my party, we want to raise that to around £13,000, so people on minimum wage aren't paying tax. And I think that's one thing that's helped encourage people into the labour market, but they still find it very difficult because of the unlimited competition coming into the country from elsewhere in the EU.
Well, and then take another policy, which is the energy freeze. That, of course, has been thrown out of the window because of falling prices, which you didn't predict.
I don't... You can't... It's important that we have a cap on energy prices.
It was a freeze.
It was a freeze.
You're stopping.
So we said all together.
It's important that we... Actually, what's really important is that we reform the energy market so that it delivers people energy at a price that they can afford. But I come back to this point. Look, people have had a really tough few years, and they're going to make, a decision based on that experience and the policies that are put forward at the election.
But
the idea that everything's rosy, I just don't think it's realistic.
It's not rosy, but I think we've got to look at where the direction of travel is and where we've come from.
And on
we're in a much better place in terms of going forward. We've got much better prospects than was the case in 2010.
And the energy
prices, government deserves some credit for that.
They're being driven up because the green subsidies and everything added onto the bills and the taxes are quadrupling.
They're falling. The energy prices are falling.
The energy prices are falling, but what about the green part of the bills?
Quadrupling. And my constituents have to pay that, and they can't afford it.
Isn't it the case, though, Mark Reckless, that if there was a consideration for the Green Party to be involved in these debates, you would have to look at the SNP and maybe even Plaid Cymru?
Yeah, there are difficulties, and
but what would you say?
I would bat this back to the broadcasters, but what I would say is that UKIP must be treated as a major party, and the fact of this is that David Cameron simply doesn't want to debate Nigel Farage. The public want to see Nigel Farage and David Cameron debate. Nigel certainly does, but the Prime Minister doesn't, and that's why he's hiding behind the Greens, because he's frightened of debating Nigel Farage.
But no one's suggesting the Greens will be there and UKIP won't be there. So it seems a very odd way to hide from Nigel Farage if he's saying he wants.
Why doesn't the Prime Minister just sign up and agree with what's proposed, or like Nick Clegg does, perhaps a head-to-head debate with Nigel Farage? I think that's what people would like.
Or isn't it that he's hoping that the Greens will attack Labour from the left?
No, I don't think that's a consideration. I think if you're going to have a debate,
it's funny just to hear you say I don't agree with any of the Greens' policies, but I really want to hear them. I don't agree with any of your opposite policies. I don't agree with any of your policies. But I'm not saying Labour should be excluded.
Surely there must be some way you can find.
Well, benefits remain protected. We have the triple lock to protect increases in pensions, which some people say is unaffordable. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies argued that in the last financial year, total spending on pensioners was more than £15 billion higher than total spending on the rest of the population. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but is it fair?
I support the triple lock, and
you voted for it when you were Conservative.
Excellent. I support it
and you still do
as UKIP, and we want to look after our older generation
because they vote for you.
Well, what I'd say to young people is get involved in politics. Make sure you vote. Go to your MP surgery. Tell them what the problems are for you. Be as engaged as some of these older people are. But of course, a lot of the older people have time on their hands, perhaps more than younger people if they've retired. And some of them, take the ones who've had pensions linked to inflation, the basic state pension, but also ones who are on final salary things. That's been positive. But ones who've been forced to buy annuities or surviving on the interest rate from their savings, it's been less good.
Right, but your party polls terribly with young voters. You accept that?
Well, in Rochester and Strood, I saw an awful lot of younger people coming out to support me in the bike.
But let's look at the polls. You would accept that UKIP does not poll well with the 18 to 24-year-olds.
We're polling better amongst that group than we were probably in the population as a whole only 3 years ago.
Right, OK, so you're still not accepting that you don't poll well?
It just shows how much we're growing as a party, and I think we have actually seen our support coming younger down the age spectrum than before.
Give me one policy that would appeal specifically to the 18 to 24-year-olds, that would improve their financial expectations.
Well, what we would do is we would increase their opportunities for jobs by having limits on the number of people coming into the country from outside, an Australian-style points-based system.
But actually 18 to 24-year-olds tend to be quite global thinking in their minds. Why would that particularly appeal to that age group?
What we currently have is a system where anyone from across the world can come and study at a British university. If they get a degree, they're given free access to our labour market. And when graduate unemployment is so high and wages haven't been rising, we don't want to have unlimited numbers coming from outside. We want a fair skills-based sort of system where we have those who will benefit the country, but not unlimited numbers.
Right.
And it's competition in the labour market that's the real problem for younger people.
Mobile surveillance officers, and in an attempt to attract applicants, have posted an online test to find out if you're up to the job. Well, we thought we would use this opportunity to put our MPs through their paces, and why not? Take a very careful look, you three, at this clip, because I'll be asking some questions about it afterwards. Well, I've never seen three of my guests watch the film so attentively then. Right, let's ask the questions. What colour... Oh, first quote, that's it. What colour was the second moped?
Red?
Blue, I think.
I only saw one and it was red.
Well, you two are right. I didn't realise, because you've gone for your colour party. You went for the blue, did you? I was going to say, you've gone for that.
Absolutely.
Right, question number 2. What did the neon sign say? Was it cafe, bar or disco?
I think
Bar.
Bar.
I'll go with bar as well.
Oh, well, next time I'm going to come to you first. You're just copying the other two, aren't you?
I'm excluded from this whole thing, like Kwasi, because we're taller than 6'1", so we're not allowed to apply to MI5.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting... That's an interesting fact, which I didn't know, but bar is the correct answer. Because you're quite observant, you three. All right, and how many cyclists were there?
I'm really guessing now, but I'm going to say 2.
Oh, yes, 1, 2 or 3. Sorry, I've got to
I'm going to say 2. I thought this is a complete guess.
I saw just the one at the end.
I would go with 1.
Well, Alison, you've gone for the sort of middle answer each time, so I don't know if that was a pattern, but you're right, actually. So you've got all 3 right. And bearing in mind, I don't think you are over 6'1".
No,
you could actually
5'8" for women is the maximum.
Is it 5'8"?
You cut under that or not?
I'm about 5'7½", so I might just make the cut.
Right. Ever been attracted to the idea of a life with the... No, he says immediately. And what about you, Mark?
I've never been asked.
What do you think of the whole idea, though, of doing an online...
I think it's very good. I think it's a really good thing. I think people should cast their net wide, and if people have the skills, they should be encouraged to do the online test, because you want the best spies that we can get.
Is that how you would look at it, Mark?
I agree. I mean, MI5 have done a lot to sort of increase the sort of diversity and range of people coming into the organisation, and
provided they screen them once they pass.
I was going to say, I mean, it does feel slightly random. What's your view, if you know anything about the screening of the...
It reminded me of that, you know, in the theory test, the bit where you have to click the hazards.
That's right.
And when you in the new driving theory test, which is slightly strange.
Right. Well, it's been such a long time since I had to do my driving.
I think I learned to drive the year before the theory test came in, so I just missed that one.
But does that mean not enough people are coming forward to want to be in these?
I'm not sure what it means. I think, as Mark said, there's been a huge drive to have a diverse and wide-ranging pool of people to sign up to this thing, and I think it's quite it's a bit of fun. And provided once they get through, they're properly screened. Because I wouldn't want anybody.
Yes,
that's very important.
Keep saying that. I mean, in the current circumstances we live in, you would think the security service was a very important job to play, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and having that diversity of people who want to communication with particular languages sometimes, and I'm sorry they don't want tall people or people with tattoos for this particular task, but we need all range and the top quality of spies.
Well, I'm afraid Alison McGovern is leading the fray from our guest for that. That's all for today.